There, now we're live.
Recording started.
It has started. Hello, Carleigh.
Hello, Steph. Good
How
to
are
see
you?
ya.
It
My old
is so
friend.
good to see you. And I was just saying, now we're recording, so now I'm going to say it again, that I will not try and fangirl you this entire time. But I will take you through, as you take me through your journey, I will take you along mine that went along with you vicariously. And yes, we're going to talk about all good things about your new debut album that is going to drop December 3rd, I believe.
Correct.
And I want to hear all of it.
Yeah.
And part of this topic series, so is breaking boundaries and following your intuition. And in the floor full of papers and things that I have in my thought processes, your name was the first one that I wrote down.
Aww.
In terms of this whole series and this whole idea that I had. And just the journey of your career, it's, I think, from what I understand from the outside world, has been pretty incredible. So I cannot wait to just dive into it and to hear all about it. So some context for the world.
Yeah.
Other than me just being a crazy fangirl. So we met in high school. Makes it just that alone sounds so
we met
far back ago.
And lifetimes ago.
Right. Yeah. And it was in drama class or musical theater class.
Yep.
And I don't even say this to be self-deprecating, like it's totally cool. There are things I'm good at and things I'm not. So I was very much in the background, and that's cool. And in the words of Becking, our teacher at the time, was like, Cortez, you're awesome. You're a little tone deaf. And I'm like, totally cool, man. And I accept it. I'm here because I love it. And I was very much in the back, embraced it happily. Carleigh was very center, as she should have been. And it all started from there in terms of vocally and just my of you. And then, and then from there, after high school and all the goodness and just following as much as I can, things that have happened has been incredible. So my first question prior to the high school of me knowing you, were you always creative? Like, was it one of those things like myself, kind of the oddball, which I am, still am? Or were you always a creative person, a creative kid, or is it something you fell into later?
I definitely was a creative kid. My mom was very creative, and she was kind of a stay-at-home mom as we were little, and we lived way out in the, we grew up in a place called Barrie. I grew up on Big Bay Point, so like out the farthest point on the water. So we were outside in nature all the time, and my mom set up a kind of like art studio for us to work on crafts and stuff. So she was very nurturing of kind of creative energy, because it was like, what else are you gonna do with these kids out here, like trying to craft? So
what do you do with these kids?
What do you do with these kids? Send them outside and be like, come home when the sun comes down, and
lights are on. That's when I want to see you.
So I was always visually into visual art and whatnot. When I was in like second grade, I had a teacher who painted, and she saw that I had natural talent. She kind of like, I was allowed to stay in at recess and like learn how to use pastels with her and stuff. So that was, I remember having like creative mentors really early on. But I was a pretty shy kid. I mean, I don't remember being shy, because I was always kind of, once I hit around 9, I was involved in theater. But starting out, I guess a pinpoint was when I was in kindergarten. My friend Melissa was supposed to sing a solo in the talent show, and she got scared last minute, excuse me, and asked if I would come up and sing with her. And as soon as like the spotlight went on me, I was like, it's my moment. I felt the hot lights. And Becking, who you just mentioned, who is my music teacher literally from kindergarten till OAC till grade 13, which is amazing to have the same kind of mentor and teacher.
I did not know that.
he came up to me after and said, "Oh, you got a good voice. You should be in the choir and stuff." So then I started singing with him. And by age like 9 or 10, I started working in theater professionally. So yeah, it's been as far as I can remember, always been singing. And I had my uncle, Paul, who unfortunately passed away a couple years ago. He was my major mentor, and he was in the theater, and I looked up to him so much. So I had a lot of these creative energies in my life, and yeah,
encouraging you all the way, which is amazing, because we know a lot of stories where it doesn't always go that way, right? In terms of the creative calling, if you will. So then take me through, okay, so a bit of a timeline. So then high school happens, and then the looming senior years happen, and then it's the script that we get told, right? So what do you want to do? Figure out what you want to do. What's stable? What's consistent? So in all the things that we hear, is this something you always knew you wanted to do? Like there was no question, like this is what I'm doing. This is what I want. I found my voice. I found my place. Or was there anything else you sort of fell into, and then we're like, no, this isn't it?
Yeah, it has always been, I mean, growing up, I studied like in a triple threat program outside of school. And so it was always kind of theater focused.
Okay.
And we also, we had an amazing theater program in high school. So I was doing professional summer theater as a kid, and then entered high school. We had this amazing group of, yourself included, of creative, really talented kids who were all coming up. And so we did these amazing productions. And then, so coming out of that, I got hired working at Talk is Free Theater, which is a theater company in Barrie.
Right.
And I think, I was like valedictorian of our year and stuff. And I loved school and I loved studying, but for some reason, I just kind of decided I was going to focus on my theater career, not take on post-secondary right away.
Yeah.
And I kind of always knew, like, I didn't really feel a calling to be a mother or, to be a wife. I kind of just was like, that seems restrictive for what I want to do. So that was never like a priority of like, how am I going to figure out how to settle down or, focus on a relationship. I more was just really interested in pursuing creation as my kind of baby that I would put out into the world. So I started working for this theater company in Barrie, worked there for several years as an actress at first, and then took on all kinds of roles. I worked literally every possible role you could, from like leading lady to follow spot operator. I was just like, and I became the education programmer and was working with kids and really loved working with kids. But again, still was like, I don't want to be a mom though. I want to like keep things open. I think I really thought I would end up on Broadway or something.
Yeah.
But in the interim, I had a lot of musician friends who were playing music, and my brother included. My brother and I were really close and had the same kind of friend circle. And I kind of started to try to insert myself in the music scene, and mainly because I wanted to hang out with him and his friends.
Yeah.
I didn't play any instruments. I just could sing. So it was like kind of difficult to insert myself into that, but I managed to. And we were in a band called Fox Jaws, and eventually it came down to like, do you want to focus on this? The band was kind of taking off, or do you want to be a theater artist? Because as an actress, I was constantly having to take time off of the band, do contracts. And so it kind of came down to like a personal ultimatum that I gave myself. The band was kind of like, you need to be more available. And so I just felt more compelled to go the music side, because I try to remain a humble person. And in theater, you're just really like selling yourself, especially as a woman. There's so much competition. And I just felt really overwhelmed by like the nature of, you have to go and audition all the time and be selling yourself to a panel of people. And it was just really degrading to me. My intuition was like, this doesn't feel good, So I was more pulled to the music side, and then I just started pursuing that in that way. Yeah, that's the long.
I want to I like that. Or go back to that for a quick second in this idea of intuition, because I think in exactly what you had just mentioned, you didn't feel a call to be a mom. You didn't right away. Not to say one day if it changes your mind or it doesn't. That's your choice. But what I'm saying is, at that point, there's so much pressure and there's so much chatter sometimes at you that there is a courage, I think, that it takes to sort of decipher what is outside chatter and what is my own voice. Right. And I think that takes more of a bravery than people even understand or even give it credit. And in terms of intuition, what I'm curious to know is what that looks like and feels like for you. What does that mean? And especially as a creative person and as even professionally, personally, but I think I call it the whisper that screams. And that's what I've named it as I've kind of gotten older. And it's like, it's always in the back of my head, but it's always there enough that it's screaming at me. And it's just that I know what I should do, what I shouldn't do, what doesn't feel authentic to me, what does, what doesn't. And it's like, it's just the whisper that screams at me all the time.
Right.
And so in following yourself in that voice, what does it felt like and look like for you over the years?
I think what I've learned about intuition is that it comes really hand in hand with self-love and with trusting yourself.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that I've actually really struggled with, despite, how my intuition has led me to a lot of amazing things. But it's also, I've been in a lot of vulnerable positions as well, because I've not practiced self-love and I've not been listening to my gut and my intuition, and I get in vulnerable situations because of that. So it's constantly learning how to listen to that. And it really just comes with self-love and self-worth, because if you don't love yourself, then you're not listening to your own voice that's telling you what's right for you. Intuition also comes hand in hand with like integrity, I find. And in my work, you can kind of sense in yourself when you're agreeing to do work that doesn't really resonate with you, or that isn't right for you. And that often comes, like scarcity of work can come into play with that. Absolutely. Where you're like afraid to say no to things when you're really like, I don't actually want to do this, but I'm afraid work won't come, so I'll say yes. And when you trust yourself and your integrity and your intuition, and you say no, that allows space for the things that you want to come into your life. If you're constantly saying yes because you're afraid nothing else is going to come along, you're not leaving room for those right things to come into play. So intuition it's been like it's a journey to, like you said, it's very hard to differentiate between just chatter, self-doubt, the self-saboteur voice that comes into play, and then the voice that is in there that knows what you need and want and deserve, and it just comes. In order to tap into your intuition, you really have to, I think, practice self-love and care in order to quiet the chatter, quiet the things that tell you you're not worthy of what you deserve,
And that scarcity mentality, I think, is a big one. It's the scarcity of stability. If you're not going to do this, what are you going to do? Well, if you don't know right now, maybe I will know. In a little bit. And it's like allowing that time to figure it out. And I think people get so scared and impatient within that time. It's like, no. Let the universe help you. Like, it will in fact help you. What's meant for you is never going to miss you. And I think that's part of it too. But it's that trust. It's like you said, you have to trust that about yourself in order for the rest to kind of align.
Yeah. And I do. Yeah. I think just what you said, what's meant for you will come to you. But there are more direct, or there's paths of least resistance to get there. And then there's ways that, like, you're kind of diverting and eventually you're going to that. But yeah, it does take pause and patience. And we're told right out of school, it's like, okay, time to go to college, time to get a job, time to make a family. There's this timeline. And if you're my age at 37, I still am fighting that voice in me that's like, you should be here. You should have these things. You should, every day you battle that because that's what that's what we're taught, I think it's just a capitalist kind of like mentality.
Absolutely.
And it is scary. It's, when I turned 35 and like I said, I've never really thought of myself as becoming a mother, but you turn that age and you're like, oh, there's a shelf life. Like,
right.
Oh my God, am I actually going to end up alone with no children? Like, and does that make me a real woman or whatever? Like
all those thoughts.
Those thoughts, they're just, you realize how entrenched they are in your psyche just from societal norms, And it was surprising to me to have those feelings after, never giving a second thought to like having children. But you just realize that's just instilled in us so deeply by societal norms or whatever. So it's interesting. Yeah.
And part of why I love doing this so much is because I feel or have felt the exact same thing, but in the other way. Mm-hmm. So I think looking back on my life, and I really truly don't have a lot of regrets. However, I can identify moments where I followed the chatter that was not mine out of a scarcity mentality. Mm-hmm. And I followed a path that I thought I was supposed to, because that's what made logical sense, even though certain things, like in hindsight, looking back, I'm like, I should have waited. That could have, I could have tried that, And I, now at this time in my life, I'm like, you know what? Creatively, I want to do this. I want to try this podcast thing. I want to paint more and I want to do more. But I have the other guilt where I'm, taking time away from my kids. Right. I should be doing this. No, but I could be doing this. It's like, but it's like, this is kind of selfish. I shouldn't. No. And I battle that as well.
Yeah.
So it's what I find so interesting is that our journeys can be so different, and yet the feelings are so entrenched and so ingrained that anything that we feel like is more authentic to sort of ourselves in time, and what that is, comes with this sort of guilt if it veers in any way different than what should be or what has been expected to be.
Right.
And I find that, and I find that so interesting, because I've had very, very similar feelings of when there was a time I should have followed this and I didn't. Mm-hmm. And now I know that, and I know the consequence of what that made me feel like.
Right.
And it didn't honor parts of myself. And then I don't show up the same for people in my life and relationships and motherhood and all those things. So yeah, I find
that's how you come to know. That's, intuition or listening to the inner voice comes through trial and error of doing all these things that don't feel right. Of course, in hindsight, you can step back and say, oh, I could have done it this way, but it's all part of the journey to you discovering what is the difference between the chatter and my voice by making those missteps. And they're not missteps. They're just again, like a
different way,
a diversion from the direct path. Right.
Yeah.
And that also is, making mistakes and being in those, in my case, a lot of vulnerable situations and abusive situations or whatever, that helps you, there can become a lot of guilt from that too, saying like, how did I get myself into this position? But that's how you can step back now and see, gain the knowledge and know how to listen to your voice better.
And then trust it better when it starts. Like, I feel like I have a better handle now than I ever did then. But you got to go through the shit. Like, it's like I went through the shit, and now as a result, it's like, no, instead of shutting it up, it's like, no, I know what that is. Or like, even like physically, like, when the hair stands on the back of my neck, I'm like, that's it. Okay. Like, even just understanding like those parts of myself that I didn't necessarily really pay attention to then. So I had to go through what I went through. So sometimes the rock bottom, I would say rock bottoms, but those darker points or those blurrier points are actually where
the illuminating
for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So now I'm going to take this time to acknowledge that I'm going to fangirl, and that it's okay. You're going to accept all that's going to come at you right now. So Your career. So this is from the outside. This is from outside person, audience perspective. So it has gone through so many, like you said, amazing experiences. So I'm going to drop things. I don't know if they're all in chronological order, but here they go. So from Bahamas, with, I think it's, I don't know if I say his name right, Alfie Jervanen. Am I saying that right?
His name's Afi Jervanen. Yeah.
So not even close. So right on.
So, you're not the first person to mispronounce his name. Trust me. That's why he went with Bahamas.
Not even close. That's amazing. So that is where the first time, this was after high school, I was in college. I was with my boyfriend at the time, now my husband. Yeah. And we were at Starbucks and Chapters, and we were in line, and there was a few people in front, and I saw the Bahamas album. This was prior to Spotify and all things. This is when downloading wasn't okay. Yeah. And we're in line going to get a drink, and I saw it like through the people. I saw in the front the album Bahamas, and I'm like, I think that's what one Carleigh's on. And Steve was like, "Is it?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh." So like I grabbed one, and I was looking, and keep in mind we're having this conversation, and the line is moving to the front. I'm like, "Oh, that's her name. That's her." Like, okay, we'll buy it. I'm like, "Yeah." And then again, now it's our turn, not really paying attention, going through the motions of going forward. We are now at the front. We are unaware that we're at the front. And Steve's like, "Should we buy all of them?" And I'm like, like to give away? And he's like, "I don't know. I feel like we just should support it." And there were like 3 or 4 that there. I'm like, "Yeah, okay." So then I grab them, and then I turn, and then realizing we're not the only ones on the planet. And then the people in the back were like, and I'm like, "Oh, no, like, I'm so sorry." I'm like, "No, like, we know her. Like, we know this person." And they were it was that moment, as soon as I said it, I went, "Oh, I sound like that." And then I just looked, and they're like, "I'm sure you do. You want a coffee?" I'm like, "Okay." And then I turned to the barista, and she's just like, "Are you going to buy all those?" And I'm like, "No." And then I put it down. He's like, "Let's go. It's time to get out of Dodge." And I said,
"You didn't buy a single one."
So I literally, that is the moment where I'm like, "Her name's on the back. Oh, I went to high school with her." And they're like, "Sure you did. Sure you did. Is this your moment you want right now?" I'm like, "No, I'm excited." Anyway, so I got my beverage, and like I said, we left. So that is as far back as I remember is when I bought Bahamas album. Yeah. And then from there, like, again, I don't know about the order, but like singing Back Up for Macy Gray, Lose My Number, Grey's Anatomy. I needed to.
That's a recent thing.
That's more recent. I just need you to know that I needed to ground myself, because Grey's is my show. And I'm like, "Oh my God." I'm like, "Carleigh, episode 16. No, season 16, episode 9, people. Check that out." On it. And then it was, oh my God. And then it was your appearance on, it was Conan. Then it was, I think, the Colbert Report, I remember, with Jack Johnson. Oh my goodness. Then, of course, there was Paper Birds. Let me tell you something. Another moment. I have sung backup for you in the truck with the band for a long time. Don't Want Half. Aww. My poor son. My poor children that I've had to witness. And like, if I can mimic my son's face, hold on. You're very loud. I'm like, "Buddy, it's not your time right now. It's mommy's time." And I am belting it. And I am screaming, "Don't Want Half." And I am in the back, tone deaf and all. And that's totally fine. Oh my God. Anyway, Don't Want Half. Yeah. Okay. So that was on the playlist. And then, so just give me a few more, and then I'm done the fangirling part. So like it's just, and now with the newer album and the songs that have been released, so Tougher, Lose My Number, a couple times. Letting You Go, I can't vocally do it. But it's in my head all the time. And then I will also say, and this will be one of my last amazing points in this process, is that anytime I have heard you cover Janis Joplin, I replay a few times, and it's quiet around me. I'm like, "It's not your turn. It's just not your." Something happens internally where I won't do it because it's so bad myself, like me. But like, I'm there. I'm just there, and I'm like, "Yep, that's where I would be." Yep. It's just
Awesome.
phenomenal. So now
Thanks, babe.
I'm done all of that. I mean, I'll do it anytime you want me to, boost any time.
Yeah.
But all that is true. So now that I'm going to close that now and bring down the excitement. Out of all that amazingness, because this is, I mean, I say in a few minutes what has been a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that, and even as a female in this industry, and as we just said, there has to be some shit in order for the good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I can only imagine the sacrifices, the challenges, the hardships that come with it. So tell me a bit about some of those boundaries of which you're breaking and some of those challenges that you have had to go through in order to be in this amazing place that you are. Yeah, that's what I want to know.
Yeah. I think when I was younger, I think like, I'm a woman. It's so hard to break into the music industry. But growing up in like Barrie, which is very white, I never really considered my privilege in the whole situation, being like a white, cis, straight woman.
Mm-hmm.
So the perceived boundaries I had to break through were far lesser than what many women have had to deal with in this industry. But that being said, it is a male-dominated industry. I mean, it certainly felt like that when I first kind of came into the scene, and like being a young woman and walking into clubs and people just assuming you're the girlfriend, or and then you sing and they're like, oh shit, okay, you're actually like leading the band here or whatever. And those are like microaggressions that kind of weigh on you. That's not a big deal, but it's like over time you just kind of are made to feel a little bit like your worth is not as valued. Or also just being a vocalist and not playing instruments or being very proficient at instruments.
Okay.
There's very like niche kind of, line of work that you can gain. And then you have all these other women who are your friends who are all competing for the same kind of positions. This is where this like scarcity mentality comes from.
Right.
A lot of challenges have been, just with like your friends also competing for the same positions and stuff. That can get pretty sticky. Apart from that, it's kind of like, as a straight woman working with a lot of men, it's hard to, if we're talking about differentiating chatter or whatever, it's hard to differentiate, or it has been in my experience, creative connection and chemistry with romantic connection, and those things get really intertwined, and that can become messy, and it has for me in my life.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Just like trying to maintain those boundaries of like when you're working with someone and you're really deeply connecting and you're sharing parts of yourself in that way, and not allowing that to blur into like, am I in love with this person that I'm making this work with or whatever. And yeah, just a lot of like, you get subjected to a lot of sexism. You're kind of, your body feels more like a commodity, men. But I've, for the most part, been super fortunate to work with amazing men that I've learned so much from, that respect me and have treated me wonderfully. And I've had really bad experiences, but you kind of are just like, I guess it's just par for the course, but it's not acceptable. And you kind of learn to just brush it off when it's really not acceptable. But
yeah,
anyway, I'm blabbering on. But because of my privilege, as a white person, I feel that I've benefited, I've been starting to really come to terms with like really dissecting why I am in the position I am and why others aren't. And that's been an amazing learning curve, because like I said, for a while it was like, well, I'm a woman and I have to overcome all this stuff in a male-led industry, but really not looking at like how greatly privileged I am to have done what I've done and been in the circles that I've been in. So lots of people aren't even in the position to get there, so when we talk about boundaries and stuff, yes, there's lots to break through, but I'm also starting to, excuse me, examine the boundaries that other people have faced and why I'm in the position I am in.
Yeah.
And along with that, also trusting, like, but I'm talented. I am deserving of the success that I've had. I've worked really, really hard, and I've sacrificed a lot. So it's like, it's a double.
Well, I wanted to emphasize that too, because like, yes, you're absolutely right. And I think in terms of our own privileges, we have to always be mindful of that. And I completely agree, but also don't ever sell yourself short in the sense that you have worked very, very fucking hard for where you are. And like I said, I can only imagine 1/10 of the sacrifices and the shows and time away from family and like things like that you still have to go through in order to, again, honor the whisper that screams is what I call it. But you still got to put in your time. And again, exactly that voice of I am worthy. I'm making my way, doing my thing. Certain things are not acceptable in terms of treatment, like regardless, but absolutely in terms of being aware of things, but honoring yourself, of course.
For sure. Yeah.
Now, I'm very curious I like to think a creative person myself when I can be. I want to know, I'm going to put all the links and stuff in our show notes in terms of your like videos and album release and all that information, but also the visual art side of your artistic process is amazeballs. I don't know if that's even I'm going to say that word. I don't know. It makes me sound 80 when I say it, but I like it. So I'm going to say amazeballs again.
Yeah.
Is incredible. So I'm interested to know your artistic process. So when you have an idea, whether it's for a song or whether it's for something on a canvas or not, do you shut away for a while and like you need some time to sort of be creative, try things out, let it kind of come out? Or is it one of those things which I find myself, I gravitate more toward this, where I'll get an idea almost sometimes out of nowhere. I'm like, that's it. And then I'm like, hey, then it's like, I need to be by myself for like, this is sometimes quick where it's like, no, just give me a minute. And like, I have to jot it down, write it down, sketch it out quick, maybe come back to it in a bit, but it just kind of happens. And then I got to put it somewhere and then keep going. I'm curious to know what your process looks like.
It's different, very different for music and painting. Okay. With painting, I actually have just gotten back into my practice because it's very difficult, whether you have children or you're traveling at all times.
Absolutely.
To be in one place and to be able to, and the pandemic afforded me that. And it's one of the things that I'm grateful. I have great gratitude for because it brought me back to my painting practice. And with painting, I don't even really like sketch anything out, which is blasphemous to a lot of people, but I just start the hardest part is like sitting down, setting up your paints, like getting, like if you want to paint, it's like, okay,
you're committing to some time
to sleep and like set up your shit, It's honestly like the most taxing part is like getting all your paints out and then once I'm going, it's like you can't stop me, and I get a little bit like I've been in partnerships that are like, are you coming to bed? And I'm like, nope, still painting till like 4. And so once that starts flowing, it's like doesn't stop until, and with painting, it's hard to even know when you're done. It's one of those things where it's never done, you can work on it forever. You kind of have to say like, okay, this is what it is. I'm going to leave it now. But so yeah, painting is very like flow, go with the flow. Don't really try to define what I'm doing. It'll change throughout. And that's the beautiful thing about painting. You can adapt your ideas quickly. And with songwriting, it has to be very much more intentional, and like ideas will come, melody lines or whatever, and I'll take a voice note, but then I have to like, sit. I have my recording gear set up sometimes and stuff, but because I don't play instruments, and that's due to my own like refusal to learn how to do that. But like I can plunk my way through some chords and stuff on the piano.
Yeah.
So it's like, excuse me, my voice has been rough these days. It's a very like rudimentary process, and it takes a lot of time for me to like, you know,
Mhm.
I have to like hear the chords. I usually make them with my voice, and then I try to add instrumentation. So it's much more intentional. It takes a lot more, yeah, like intention and time. And usually with songwriting, like I'll go away somewhere, or I'll, yeah, shut out the world and really be like, this is what I'm doing
Yeah.
in order to get work done. If I'm writing with other people, which I love to do, like Lose My Number, for instance, that song, we wrote that in like an hour and, you know,
So good.
put it out. So if I'm working in a partnership where like people can play the chords for me, then it's like I can come up with lyrics and melody line in no time, you know? So,
Yeah.
So it just all depends on the work environment, who I'm working with. Yeah, it's different every time, but yeah.
So segue then.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready. I want all of it. So tell me about the solo debut album,
Mm-hmm.
Junk Jewellery, December 3rd. Links will be below.
Yeah.
Tell me about the inspiration behind the album. How did this come to be? What's the messaging behind it? Yeah.
Like I said, I've been writing songs, you know, for over a decade or more,
Mhm.
2 decades now. Usually it's been in a collaborative sense, but I had all these demos that I'd record on the road, like in hotel stairwells, just like,
Mhm.
you know, putting layers of my own voice and stuff and jotting down these ideas. So I had this collection when I joined Paper Bird. It's like a group of 6 songwriters. So we all kind of pooled our songs together and picked the most successful ones. But like, so I had a whole collection from that as well. It's again, like it's so easy to just keep saying yes and snowballing the work where it's like, I haven't given any pause or time for myself or for my solo career. I've just been working with other people. And I was like on a tour with this artist, Dan Mangan, in 2019, like just before the pandemic. And my friend, actually Dan's guitar player or ex-guitar player, had been writing grants for Canada Council, and he contacted me and was like, I think that you should just let me like help you apply for this. And it was, I've applied for grants before and been, you know, very much turned down. So I was just like, whatever, I'll never get it. But yeah, let's go for it. So he had applied, and while I was on tour with Dan, I got a call saying like, you got approved for this grant. And at that time, it was like such a unfathomable amount of money to me, like that I was like, I just get to use this to like make a record. So like,
it's amazing.
Which was an amazing, again, privilege and like blessing. But so that was kind of the impetus to finally be like, all right, you're doing this now, you have the resources, let's focus. So the album's called Junk Jewellery. It's kind of like, it's a mixed bag of jewels in terms of like the sounds and the styles, you know, because it's like from a span of so many years. It's kind of all these influences of the bands I was in, or, you know, the music I was listening to at the time. So it is a very like mixed bag of different styles. And it's all these junky demos that people helped me like, you know, find diamonds in the rough and polish off and make into like realized songs. So that's where the title comes from. But also being like a backing vocalist or someone who's worked kind of supporting other people's careers, I sometimes felt like a bit of a fraud, again, like Junk Jewellery, where it's like, I'm in the midst of all this stuff. I'm doing all these things that I always dreamed about, but it's not my sole success, or I'm assisting in this success occurring, but it's not my name. It's not my songs. So I always kind of just felt like a fraud, like amongst all these diamonds. So that's also where the name kind of comes from. And just realizing that like all my missteps and mistakes and the messiness of life make me more beautiful. And this is my time to just like share these stories and honor my own value as like an artist and a soul artist, you know?
Absolutely.
And put these songs out finally. So that's a long answer to all
No,
my
it's a good answer. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's exciting. It's fun. It's been such a long. I got the grant. I started the process. I was working with a bunch of producers and going back and forth between. A lot of it was made in Montreal, and then the pandemic hit, and that just like threw a whole wrench. That's the irony. It's like, I'm finally ready to do this, world, and then the world was like,
just kidding, everyone go inside.
Yeah. So it was, but in the same regard, I felt this. We're talking about intuition again. The sense of relief of this pressure that I was like, oh, I can actually just like really take my time with this, and not feel rushed to be like, go out and do it all now. Like something in me was like, oh, I wasn't quite ready to like thrust myself into this. I needed, first of all, like rest and to be not on the road, and to like recalibrate and ground and be ready to be my own, to be leading this charge. I needed to recharge in order to be prepared to do this. And it's hard because it's like, I'm 37. I'm like, why have I waited so long to do this? And then you step back and say, because you weren't ready. You had to accumulate all of this knowledge and these lessons, and you, like you said, like you'll always come to what's for you. It just sometimes takes more patience and takes a lot more time, and that's okay. There's a reason why it's taking the time it does, and it will only unfold as it should. Just trusting that. Again, that's intuition or trust, in that internal feeling of like, instead of the imposter syndrome or the saboteur talking to you saying, why have you waited this long? You're too old. You're not, you're not a young girl anymore. Nobody fucking cares what you have to say. All those things that go through my mind, at least. It's not real. What's real is that I'm an artist, and everyone's story deserves to be heard. So anyway,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And if it had happened sooner, who's to say? I mean, we don't. Who's to say? You would have gone the same way, or you wouldn't have maybe been ready in the way that you are now to handle it on every level. Like who's to say that, right? So again, I remind myself as on the daily that life happens for you and not to you. And that is such a hard thing sometimes when you're in the midst of some dark chatter sometimes, which is it's just so easy to listen to.
Yeah.
This is maybe not the easiest thing right now. This is not where I want to be forever, but this is happening for whatever reason. I'll understand one day, but it's happening for me, not to me. And it's so easy to say. And I think it's so difficult to do sometimes.
Yeah.
So another question that I have, or one of my last questions that I have, is in your videos, so Tougher, letting You Go, are those in your place?
In like my personal home?
Like, or if you can't answer, I don't know if you can or not, but is it in like a personal space, or is it like a studio-like setup?
The most of what I've made videos of is in studios that are a lot like my like home away from home, but those are actual like recording studio spaces. One, I guess, the Tougher Than You, are you speaking of like with the women that are singing with me, like live? That's actually run by my dearest friends who are from Barrie as well. And their studio used to be this little like garage shack under an apartment on the East End that we have made so many records in, and Pine Ship Sound is now their new space. So I've been super lucky to have like my best, oldest friends have pursued some of the same things as me. And I have access to these amazing spaces that I'm super comfortable in. But it's cool that you thought that it was maybe my home, because they feel like that to me.
Well, and the thing is, and I bring this up for a reason. And the reason why I ask is because of this. It is, there's a draw to it in the vibe that it creates. So I look at that and watching the videos and the music and sort of how this kind of place that you're in, and how from what I know of you and sort of, again, the journey that I've followed from the outside, you look so incredibly comfortable, and everything about it that I watch and listen to, and I don't know how to explain it. I honestly don't have the vocabulary. I don't think that's going to do it justice, but it just is you. There's an authenticity, there is a vulnerability, and there is an approachability that I'm watching it, and it's like, it's like I could be there, like holding a coffee and just like listening while like there's like and that's, I think, what the draw is. And it's no fluff, and there's no bullshit, and there's no, there's everything about it that you look so comfortable, like I said, in the skin that you're in the songs that you're doing, in the voice, like, I mean, actually the voice, but I mean, like, in the messages behind it, it looks effortless, and it looks so comfortable, and there's a rawness to it, but it's not. I mean, it sounds phenomenal, but I'm saying there's something about it that is more inviting to me. And it's like, no, this is exactly who she is. Like, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And even while you're singing it, while you're in it, it's like, wow. And it's an inspired thing to be like, yeah, I can do my stuff too. Like, like there's an inspiration to it. And all you're doing is just doing you. And it comes through, and it really does. Like, it represents you in every way. And that's why when I saw it, I'm like, that's gotta be your place. Like, it just, like, how incredible is that? Just, and even, like I said, even if it's not, but just the vibe that it is just, it's effortless. And it really, I'll say it one more time, it's really an inspired thing, girl, because you're
Thank you.
Exactly what you should be. And it just shows naturally. There's like the glow, like, it's just exactly what you should be doing and exactly where you're supposed to be. So you're inspiring more than you realize, my love, just so you know. Just so you know.
That means a lot. It's hard to, again, like, when you're presenting yourself to the public, it's hard to shut down that chatter and that self-doubt, and to
Absolutely
really trust that, like, what people actually resonate with is like authenticity and vulnerability.
Yeah.
And you have to make the choice to, like, there's so many like frills and things that you can put up as a mask to like protect yourself. And it's still like, even if it seems authentic, and I try to be, but it's like, there's still like a mask that you put on when you're presenting yourself publicly. But I think that I've just tried to remind myself that, like, people will connect with that, with that vulnerability, and that, and the reason I look so comfortable is probably because, well, I've been singing for literally 30 years, but like, I'm surrounded by some of my oldest, closest friends who are all incredibly, like, there's an embarrassment of riches around me of talent and people that make me feel supported and super comfortable with myself, because I don't have to put anything on around them, so it's also it's like the company you keep. And in this industry, it's very difficult to, you're constantly like, with managers or with labels or whatever you're working with, they want you to be this marketable package, and lots of people have had to compromise and change their identity, or, like, present themselves inauthentically because of those voices that are saying, you're not this enough. You need to be this more. You need to be this and this. Right. And so, like, releasing this record independently without any kind of label or any outside voices saying, like, yeah, but this is what you should be, or, it's just like, this is what it is. It's my voice. I'm sorry if you can't, like, package it in a neat little bow and say, here's a pop record, or it sounds like this. It's like, it sounds like me. And I don't know if that's because people want to listen to what they know, you know what I mean? That's like, well, what does it sound like? It needs to sound like something I know. And if you can't give that answer, it might seem like, well, you don't know who you are. But it's like, no, this album is a mixture of all the parts that I am, and it's not one thing.
Exactly. It's not one. And and just know that despite the things we have, it's like you said, it's certain things we have to do in order to do this. And
Mhm.
absolutely, but just know that the connection is there. Like you're still there. Like you're still very much there.
Mhm.
And it's whether I have known you for so long, I don't know, but I'm like, no, it's like this. And exactly, there's no label. There's just, this is me.
Mhm.
And that will resonate more than any package. And
Yeah.
that I will say, and it's just staying true to that authentic voice that people will not only gravitate toward, but I think will be inspired by and following their own path, whatever that is. I mean, whatever that may look like will be different, but
Right.
it is amazing. And so album Junk Jewellery drops December 3rd.
That's right.
I will, I mean, I'll say it, but I mean, it'll be on my
Maybe it'll be in Starbucks.
Right. Starbucks. Well, that doesn't make sense anymore.
That?
But
Starbucks.
I mean, I would do it if it was there. Kids in tow.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for like a new manager, let me know. Again,
Okay.
if you don't mind some children, you won't even know they're there. It's totally fine. They'll add liveliness and character.
Absolutely. I love
fingerprints on everything.
I love children. Yeah.
So thank you so much, my darling, for doing this. I appreciate it very greatly. I'm going to end this here, but don't go anywhere.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, everyone.